it's really, really fun to be here. I was just telling Linda, I said, I don't really have a script because my brother and I grew up with this. So every time I look at the TV and see the slide, then there's so many memories that go along with that. But I want to tell you very quickly about Manning Smith and Nita Smith individually. And it's hard for me to call them Manning and Nita instead of Mom and Dad, but I'm going to try real hard. But they were both very, very outstanding people before they ever got involved in recreational dance. Manning Smith was an All-American quarterback at Centenary College. And does everybody know who Homer Norton is? Everybody knows who Homer Norton is. Well, when Manning Smith graduated, an undefeated quarterback from Centenary, he came with Homer Norton to Texas A&M to revamp the A&M football program. So before he came to College Station in 1934, he just happened to graduate with a degree in physics and math, and at A&M, a chemistry degree. And he always said to me, he said, honey, you know what? A man's career is deciding what he doesn't want to do. Well, he was physics, math, and chemistry and became a square dance caller. Who can tell what's going to happen next? But he was just really outstanding in everything. He lettered in every football sport, and he was just a very personable guy with a finger in every pie. Nita, Juanita Calsert, was from teeny tiny Junction, Texas. She went with her mother at 16 to go to Westmoreland Junior College because she had skipped a grade and then they only had 11 grades. So she was very young. She was the cheerleader, the most popular girl, you know, all that stuff. And when these two stars met together on the A&M 1938 Cotton Ball dance, it was like an uproar of stars everywhere because they knew something was going on. But guess what? They didn't actually get together until the spring of 1938. They got together on the dance floor, and it was literally love at first dance. So they went on, they had a first date in Thanksgiving of 1938, and they were married in July of 39. So when they came and started their lives together, Nita called it a year of honeymoon because that's when Texas A&M's football team went, great. So she was there at Tulane when they won the national championship for the whole shebang, and it just went on like that. Well, so they were very, very involved in the College Station community for a good long time. Manning was in the athletic department for 12 years, and in that time, he was on the Boy Scout Council, he was on the College Station Recreation Council, all kinds of community activities. Nita, in the meantime, had become the director of the cotton pageant at A&M, which was a big deal. And she was also on the Girl Scout Council, Women's Club, and all the social things that went on with college life. So that kind of gives you an idea. In 1946, Manning came back from a short stint for World War II, and Coach Homer Norton told him, it's time for you to get out of the coaching business, Manning. So he resigned, started into a couple of other businesses, but he also got very, very involved with recreational dance. And there we go. I've already talked my whole time. Okay, so here we're looking at early things. Up at the top is 1948. Raise your hand, big brother. This is my brother Dee, and I was 3 years old in their square dance Christmas card in 1948. Oh, I just told on myself. So over on the far left, you can see that is something from the Bryan newspaper talking about square dancing that's going on in the community. And there's a lot of newspaper clippings in this because I want you to see all the stuff. Square dancing was just really, really getting started in the whole of the United States. And they happened to get down on the proverbial ground floor, and they just took off with it. Unbelievably, this was 1949, and A&M had WTAW at the admin building, and Manning Smith started a square dance school on the air, and he had a lot of people tuning into that. He started off with a square, 8 kids of 7th graders, and they actually square danced, and he would let some people come in to watch, but it was primarily just something over the radio. During this time when they were really getting established, he started going down to Galveston, Texas, to do Saturday night square dances. And up on the top, left and right, that is a bunch of the people in Galveston that were coming for this open air pavilion square dance. And on the right-hand side was a big deal. Anytime there was a big dance way back in the day, the Grand Square actually opened up everything. That was the big deal. So that's what that is over there. And in the meantime, he found out about some kids that were very interested in skating. I've never seen another roller skating exhibition group, but he worked with them. Dee and I were in Galveston a lot, weren't we? And they were incredible. I'm going to show you some more pictures right now. You don't even see these kind of moves on people that are on the floor. Exhibition groups are at every national square dance convention, but they don't do all of them. Some of them do. But this was quite amazing. And they started going around and giving exhibitions all over the place. The only problem is, Manning said, when the Korean War came, he lost all of his guy skaters. And so he was sad about that, but that's the only reason that it stopped, I think. This is another thing that is amazing to me. This is the early years of their career. And on the far right, back in the 40s and 50s, the inaugural ball for the governors frequently was a Western theme. So this is 1953 on the far hand right, but they also did the same thing in 1955, and Manning Smith was the MC for the program at the inaugural ball. One of the first places that they actually were invited to come, they were doing all kinds of dances in the state. Manning at one point was the president of the Texas Square Dance Teachers Association, Callers Association, and in between times, they were going all over the place. Madisonville, Caldwell, Franklin, Hearn, and all the little towns in between. And when Dee and I were young, they would just dress us and take us with them. And when we got tired, they had a little pad out in the back, in the car in the back, and Dee and I just go to bed. But we had so much fun because back then you didn't have to worry about anybody messing with your kids. So we were just everybody's children, and we loved them and they loved us. So the first real big, just their first big out-of-state thing was in Kansas. So that's from little bitty College Station. By the way, when Manning Smith came to College Station, Texas, there were only 3,000 Aggies. Right. And 1938, when we were incorporated here, I think there were less than 500 people that even voted in that election. And so it was a very small place to be from, and going off to a state convention in Kansas was really a big deal. I did want to say one other thing about that previous slide. The man on the left, in the left picture, was Lloyd Shaw. They all called him Pappy. And he is actually known as the father of square dancing in America. He was starting with a group of high schoolers in Colorado Springs, and he was a real educator, and he was looking for something to motivate these children, and he built an unbelievable program, took those kids all over everywhere doing exhibition work, and pretty soon square dancing and round dancing just took off. Does everybody know what round dancing is? No. How many of you know how to do Cotton Eye Joe? Oh, come on, raise your hands. If you're a Texan, you got to know Cotton Eye Joe. If not, I'm going to sign you up for a class after this is over. Cotton Eye Joe is a very simple group of steps to a specific piece of music going around a hall. That's when you're in a couple, not in a line. So round dancing started out small like that. It's also called couple dancing. Started small, but little by little it got more and more and more complicated. So where everybody, my mother learned how to do it when she was a child. Everybody knew how to do these old folk dances, and they would do them in between the square dancing at these different festivals when she was a child. So Pappy Shaw was one that promoted having square dancing and round dancing all the time together. Now you find square dance clubs that mostly do square dancing and round dance clubs that do mostly round dancing. And there's different levels of each. There's beginning all the way up to advanced in both cases. But Pappy Shaw was the one who, he was incredible. He came here and visited one time. Banning and Nita, went to his summer programs for 8 years. He had a leadership clinic, and these people like Manning and Nita would come from all over the United States and Canada to learn from him the teaching techniques, the actual dances themselves. So he was instrumental in getting them started. And it was in the 50s when Manning Smith was a caller good enough for Columbia Records to start him on all 3 records have his calls on them. Hold on.
You Alabama left with your left hand, a partner right, a right and left grand. Here comes Sal, there goes Kate. Meet your partner, promenade 8. Promenade, go round the ring. Promenade, back home and swing. Swing 'em to the old steel guitar rag. Head couples bow, give 'em a swing. Split your corners with an elbow swing. Go home and sashay your partner, step out to the middle of the floor, swing that opposite lady a little bit more. Then you circle for outside of the world, and Alaman left your tawny girl, and do-so-do with your very own. Leave her, boys, go home alone, leave her there and circle 3. Shoot the pretty girl through to me, now swing 'em to the old steel guitar rag. Side couples bow, give 'em a swing. Split your corners.
I have a real hard time standing still when I hear that. I'm sorry we don't have a louder audio. A lot of young people, if there's any young people in the crowd, they probably don't even know what that record player is. We do though, most of us don't. This is a 33 record. How about that, folks? By the way, up in the far right-hand corner was the Rhythm Outlaws. And back then, there was always live music. It was not recorded music. And that's why it was kind of neat for Columbia to put out this series of party records, because then people, they could have some people in their living rooms and they could have a little square and dance some without having to have a live band.
Leave her there and circle 3. Shoot the pretty girl through to me, now swing 'em to the old steel guitar rag. roadside couples bow.
One of the things that was incredible for Dee and I, we got to travel and we got to play. They had to work. So we were spoiled all the time. And these square dancers are fun-loving people. There would be a big square dance, and then there were also after parties. I never knew that a square dancer drank. You can't drink in square dance because you'll mess up your square just about that fast, and then nobody wants to dance with you anymore. So people didn't drink during the square dance, but they had a good time afterwards. And lots of times these places, like this was up in, excuse me, up in the Elkhart Lake, Wisconsin, and they called everybody, the whole theme was everybody was a knothead. And this was the sense, you know, when you're being a knothead, this is what you got. And even the serving people, the guys that ran the lodge, they knew that sign, and that's what they're doing over on the left. You can see that busloads of people would come, and every one of these institutes had a lot of people. We're not talking about 20. We're talking to 100, 150, maybe not always that much, but quite a few people. And they always had such a good time. And the bottom picture there, Mother and Dad, Manning and Nita, had a special dance that they did, and it had to do with a chase scene in it. It was called Rosie O'Grady, and that's what she's doing right there. She's running away from him during that dance. So they had so much fun. So that was just one institute. They had lots of institutes. They traveled up to 50,000 miles a year as they got better and better known. So this right here is some of the brochures or programs or whatever in some of these other places that they went. I want to point out, I put in this balance and swing cartoon up here. I don't think you can probably see it way back in the back, but that is a car with Dad driving and the kids up in the front, and Mom is in the back with her petticoat because there was no other room for anybody else. And this got to be quite a joke because we would travel every summer, and my brother got motion sickness, or so he said. So he rode in the front seat. I had to ride in the back, and I had this little bitty spot just like this. And the car was packed from floorboard to ceiling, total. Square dance clothes like this, petticoats, everything you could imagine, because we left mid-May. We were threatened within an inch of our lives if we didn't have good grades so we could get out of school. We left mid-May, and we did not get back until August. So we were gone for all summer long, and we had to pack for all of that. And heaven help it, it did happen one time. We had a flat tire, and Manning Smith had to unload the whole car in order to fix the flat. So that was kind of sad. But these are just some of the places that they went. In 1958, they had achieved status, I guess you'd call it, I'm not sure what. The United States Air Force found out that they were really good at what they do. And they got the two of them 2 times, 1958 and 1960. They were sent over by the Air Force. There's the orders from the USAF over there, and they went to places like Chiemsee, Germany, and several other places. They went to Turkey and all, 2 different times. So that was quite something, and they were sent over there to entertain and teach the services people. So it was really something for them, I think. I wanted to tell you in this slide, the people, like I said, had so much fun. It wasn't just about going and learning a routine of steps or learning how to teach. They had fun the whole time that they were in these institutes. And one of them that Manning and Nita did for probably at least 12 years in a row was at Camp Grandview in Montgomery, Alabama. And they would do crazy things like that yellow toe. They would do, I'm not sure how the people got caught, but men had to get their big toe painted red. So it was some kind of joke that they were pulling on people, and they were doing things like that all the time. It was always good fun, but somebody was at the brunt of it. Down on the bottom, you can see what a large crowd. I'm not sure where it is. I can't see sideways, Linda. But it's crowds like that. That's probably in Banff, Alberta, Canada. They had their 4 most favorite institutes, they called them, and they could be anywhere from 3 days to 7, usually 7, was Asilomar in California, Kirkwood Lodge in Missouri, which we're going to see in a minute, the one in Alabama, and the one in Banff, Alberta, Canada. Okay, this was my favorite and probably Dee's favorite too, because all the time that all these grown-ups were working away, learning new dances and learning how to teach the waltz and all that, Dee and I were down learning how to ski. So we got to water ski all the time that they're working. And one of the things that made people so aggravated, because I was a teenager by that time, or moved along to that, and Manning Smith could dance like a dream. He could take any one of you and make you feel like a ballroom dancer without having any training. And people would get so mad because I would come up, because I like to watch and then I like to dance. He would grab me up when they were doing their new round dance that everybody had learned, and they had worked all day long to learn it. And my dad would take me, and we'd go out on the dance floor, and he would just cue. He would tell me what was coming in my ear. And so I could get up there and just dance away, and people would get almost mad. How come she can do that? She was out water skiing. She wasn't learning this dance. Down in the bottom, I wanted you all to see that Manning and Nita Smith loved what they did. They absolutely loved to dance. So these 2 pictures down here, you can see them playing with each other and just having a really good time. When they were getting ready to retire, I wrote to everybody I could think of all over these whole United States, asking people, do you have any film of Manning and Nita Smith dancing? And it was such a disappointment. I never, ever could find anything, but we have 2 little video clips here. The music in this are not synced because I had the music, and this clip was just an 8mm film clip. And they were just practicing out in the yards and getting whoever lived there to film for them. This was one of their favorite exhibition dances. It was called Lady of Spain. And I just was so proud every time I ever sat, and they would exhibit this with hundreds of people watching. I want you to also notice this was in the early days, because when she twirls, look at the pantaloons she had on. The next one that you're going to see, again, is just a little clip. They were in a gymnasium, and people were sitting all the way around. And it was called Rosie O'Grady. And you have to understand that as they got more and more experienced, they got into more and more advanced round dancing. I mean, it got to be very involved. But what everybody always wanted to see was their exhibition called Rosie O'Grady. And people would just say, okay, that other one's fine. We want to see Rosie O'Grady. And that was the one where they had the little chase in it. Notice the pantaloons had become pantalettes by that time, much shorter. I'm so sorry you can't see their faces because they are always just in proverbial hog heaven when they're dancing. Okay, this is Rosie O'Grady here. She's running away from the camera, but you can't see it. She's always going. It's hard for my feet to stay still when I hear that music. The last thing they always did was a jitterbug exhibition. And when I was 5 years old, Manning Smith, Dad, took me out into the garage. I can remember it to this day, and that was a long time ago, like back in the dark ages. And I learned how to jitterbug, and that was a big deal. Even with all these round dancers and square dancers, they wanted to see Manning and Nita do a jitterbug. And boy, could they do it. In these dance institutes, they would also cover some tango. They would cover a lot of teaching techniques and stuff, but they also would do the jitterbug stuff. That dress she has on is a Nita Smith dress. What I was going to tell you, we'll see some slides in a few minutes about Fashions by Nita Smith, which was started in 1960. That was about the time when my brother graduated from high school. I was getting into high school, and Manning Smith said, oh my goodness, it's not going to be too long till Sherry's leaving, and then I'll have a cratered Nita Smith. So they got started with Fashions by Nita Smith. In the meantime, Manning Smith's dance classes at Texas A&M were very, very popular. And part of it was because there were no girls on the A&M campus. And every Tuesday night, he would have a dance class, and it was an elective. And boy, that class filled up really fast because the girls in high school, Bryan, College Station, and surrounding communities would come, and they would be partners for the Aggies, and then they were learning themselves. So up in the left-hand corner, yours truly is there, pining for my husband, who was in Vietnam at the time. And this helped keep my mind occupied. And then a little bit later on, not that same 1967, but these others show you newspaper clippings of when Manning Smith did Parents' Day at A&M, and also had lots and lots of Aggies coming for special events. He would do Western-themed parties for SCONA and all the different departments at A&M who wanted to have something really neat. And he was a master at taking children that didn't know each other, like at fish camp, and he would have them dancing and having the time of their lives in just nothing flat. Okay, this is what I was going to start and tell you about. So Fashions by Nita Smith was not a store per se. It was an online, no, not online. No, spare me. It was a mail order business. And what happened, the story was that when she was early on, she was a good-looking gal. And these big petticoats, guess what happens when you twirl? Everything shows. And so she was not liking that, so she went to her mama one day and said, "You sew, I want you to sew me an undergarment so my panties don't show." And so she is the one, she and her mom put together these pantaloons, but they were short. And you can see on the far left that they were kind of like a second petticoat underneath the skirt. And she had so many people, women, asking about this that she said, well, you know what, there's a need here. I think I'll start a business. And the same thing happened with the petticoats. She found a lady in Dallas who was doing petticoats, and so everywhere she went, people would say, oh, I want a petticoat like that, you know. Where can I get it? So they started this business in 1960, and the reason I put that order form in there is because it's showing you the pantaloons when she was wearing her original ones, and then this led to the business. In the right-hand side is a picture of her in one of the, they called them squaw dresses back then. They were very, very popular in the Southwest and in Colorado, where Pappy Shaw was, and all of them wore these wonderful dresses that were like that. That was a really pretty yellow, and that was silver lame. That was a big deal. Louie, why don't you keep it? The majority, I was looking at them. We're gonna see a few more things, but initially they were $29.95, then they got to be $39.95, and then they started going up from there. And she was called the Neiman Marcus of the square dance world. And the people would get these brochures. She put a brochure out every season. We'll see them in just a minute, with some kind of special theme, and then there's an order form, and women had to give all of their very specific measurements, and then she had contracted with seamstresses to sew these custom-made garments in their homes. So they fit beautifully for the most part, and if they didn't, they'd send them back, make the corrections. And when they got their dress, they had something unique. And you could go, I could go, of course, I knew it pretty well, but I could go on a dance floor and I could say, okay, that's a Nita Smith dress, that's a Nita Smith dress, that's a Nita Smith dress. They just had a very unique look to all of them. So over here on the table, there's some of these things that I'd like for you to look at if you have time. I'm always running late. But this is one of the national conventions. We went to a lot of conventions, and in the vendor hall that you're all familiar with, they would have all kinds of different things for sale, and the Fashions by Nita Smith booth was set up, and it wasn't a fancy booth because it was all taken up with petticoats. And people would come in and we'd measure their skirt length and all the colors of the rainbow and many more. So it was quite something to watch that. Up in the far top right, that's Manny and Nita with one of the people that were running the state convention, the national convention, I'm sorry. And then the dress I'm wearing and the dress that Marilyn Hornback on, they were all Nita Smith fashions. Here's another really neat dress of hers that's taken in front of our fireplace at home. They have so many different pictures that were taken of them that were professional and even not professional, because they went to all these different festivities and festivals and conventions and state and national conventions, that they always had to have promo stuff that was published in the programs. But On the left, I had to put this in. I don't know why I wanted to share this with everybody, but every convention would have a fashion show. And of course, we were trying to represent Fashions by Nita Smith. We were trying to sell petticoats and dresses. And my name always came up to be the model. And so I had a lot of fun doing that. But this particular time, I was busy in the petticoat booth, and I didn't get to go to the practice. So I come twitching out there to model my dress, and guess what? There was an orchestra pit. Whoa! Big step. And you could have heard that whole auditorium. It was like deathly quiet, like, and I peeked up. I said, oh, okay. Got up and went on my merry way, but I tell you what, I burned with embarrassment for the rest of that convention. And of course, square dancers are wonderfully forgiving, but they also like to tease like crazy. So I was in a Nita Smith dress and stuff, so they knew Nita Smith's booth was the one that went in the orchestra pit. That was actually the third National Square Dance Convention back in 1954. So, no, that's not right. Anyway, around then. So up in the right-hand side was the 23rd National Square Dance Convention that was in San Antonio. And by that time, it was 1974, and Fashions by Nita Smith was well known, and so was Nita Smith, because she did sewing panels. She was always so willing to share everything she knew about how to sew the clothes, anything you wanted to know, she was willing to share. And so she was asked, naturally, to be the chairman of the Square Dance fashion show in San Antonio. So that was a whole big deal, but it turned out beautifully because she had a fella who was a photographer who had taken beautiful pictures of all of the Texas wildflowers. So she organized each one of the groups by color. So she had women from all, and men too, from all over the United States in that fashion show, and it was really quite outstanding. She was a detailed person. Linda Harvell, she made me look irresponsible. Okay. These are just 4 of these brochures that I was showing you. There's a couple of them over there too. They were really neat. She was very lucky in that she found graphic artists in College Station, you know, way back early on. And they did a beautiful job. I don't know who actually published these for her,
Looks
but
like my mother's drawings.
really, what I have a whole lot of them. You know, from 1960 to about 1980, and we have almost all of the brochures that were sent out, and they are works of art. They really are. One of the things that is really neat, and this a small exhibit for Manning and Nita Smith was included in the George Bush exhibit that was done in 1913. No, 2013 was College Station's 75th anniversary of their incorporation. And there was a guy in the College Station media department named Mike New, and he was just fascinated with all of the petticoats and the stuff that I kept bringing to the meetings. And one of the things that he was most interested in was all of these different badges, name tags, ribbons, all kinds of things. Every single institute and dance, practically, that they were in, you know, that they were a part of, a staff member, they would all have these name tags, and some of them were really very, very interesting. But I just wanted you to see them because they are very colorful, and some of them are crazy. Like this one I have on was from the little square dance group that Larry and I belonged to a long time ago, and it says, "Never seen it done better." Or you'll see a little one that's got lips on it. Well, that you better watch out. That hot lips is out to get you. So there's all kinds of different funny ones. This was on the right was a book that is called Texas Dance Memories, and they have the lady has highlighted all of the older people, which is really, this is the history of round dancing and square dancing. It's a little pamphlet book. In fact, I think I have one over there on the table that you can look at. And I didn't even know that Manning and Nita Smith were in there. And one day I was flipping through it and I went, whoa, look at there. There's my parents. Cool. On the left, that's a picture of 2 Sets in Order magazines. And Sets in Order was published out of California by a man named Bob Osgood. And he was really, really instrumental in promoting square dancing and all the people that like fashions by Nita Smith. But 2 different times, Manning and Nita Smith were featured on the front cover of the Sets in Order magazine. And it had a national and even, I think, partly international scope, you know, how wide they would. So this was really an honor for them to be on here. One of the times was in 1971 when they were inducted into the Square Dance Hall of Fame. Speaking of, that is a plaque on the left honoring them for being in the Hall of Fame, and then the middle one is an actual painting. Each person in the Square Dance Hall of Fame has a painting on the wall. And I said, I wish I could get my hands on that painting. I can't, but that's what it looked like. And then this is just some of the men, and there weren't too many women at that point. You can't see theirs. They're listed on the very bottom. It's very light. They were always doing something really, really neat. And on the bottom right, there's also one for Manning Smith too, but it's a certificate honoring them and making them honorary citizens of New Orleans. So when they would go in for one of these big festivals, like a state festival, one of them, I think it was in Mobile, Alabama, they had been there so many times and had really put themselves out. Initially, they didn't even take a salary to go in and do the Mobile Festival, and so they actually one year gave them a key to the city from the mayor. So I thought that was really cool. But these are different. The ones on the left, I believe, are honorary citizens of the city of Lubbock. And so they were treated like VIPs. And actually, they were. In their field, they were, well, to me, they were the most outstanding. And there were very few that were at their level. I haven't mentioned really well, I haven't mentioned it at all, that they were not only beautiful dancers, they were wonderful choreographers. They wrote 31 different dances over the course of the 60s and 70s. And there's 2 of them here. I think there were actually 3, but 2 of them were put on the all-time classics list. One of them was Tango Manita. Somebody in Houston coined that word, said, oh, we're going to call them Manning and Nita, they're Manita. So this was Manita Waltz that won that prestige, and then the other one was Tango Manita, which they wrote in one evening. They got up to an institute somewhere, I don't know where it was, and people were wanting to get into some Latin dancing, and they didn't know what to do, and so they pressured Manning Smith, and he said, okay. And one night before they had to go and teach it the next day, and that was all about the basics of tango and putting it into a round dance, and it became absolutely one of the most popular and is also on that classics list. In the middle down at the bottom, that is actually 1980. That was when they were celebrating their 30th anniversary of the Manning Smith Round Dance Institute. It was held for 20 years in the MSC. And when the MSC started remodeling that building, they had to leave, so they took it up to Stillwater, Oklahoma, to Oklahoma State, and it was there for another 10 or 12 years. One more, up in the far right-hand top corner, that is called a Milestone Award, and that was given to Manning Smith in 1978. It's the highest honor that can be given to a square dance caller by the National Square Dance Callers Association. And Nita used to say, that's like earning an Academy Award. She was very proud of him. This is when they were getting ready to retire. The National Round Dance Teachers Association had a big affair and awarded them these different trophies, and it was just really nice. They were very proud. By that time, they were getting on and they weren't dancing as much, so they had to retire off the road. This one on the right was a really neat article in the Bryan Eagle, 1986. It was really cool because that's one of my favorite pictures of Mother and Dad. And that's the picture of them younger, and then the bottom left is when they were a little bit older. So that was 1986. Manning Smith passed away in 1992. He was still very, very active. He was doing fish camp, and he was running a business, and it just was too much. Fish camp was out of town, and he was back and forth. So a stroke hit him about 75, and at 80, he passed away to everybody's great sadness. On the left is another newspaper article, an interview that was done of Nita Smith about whatever that year is I've got up there, in 1994, I think. And she happens to be holding this dress. And this dress and this petticoat were the ones that were on display at the George Bush Library. So somewhere along the line, I hope to donate this to a museum. I felt really good to be able to get in it. Now, if I could just do Rosie O'Grady, I'd be all set. But anyway, this was the Memphis National Square Dance Convention. You can see that they're sitting there in the vendor's booth. And that was just a couple of years before Manning Smith passed away. And this picture just thrills me to death because that expresses so much of who they were. They loved people and they loved dancing from day one, and they had a 40-year career of pleasing other people. And I wanted to read to you what Nita Smith wrote, and then I copied it and put it in my words. Manning and Nita Smith were celebrities in their field of recreational dance, but they were just regular, down-to-earth individuals who loved people. I'm gonna cry. And their chosen profession, they met on the dance floor, and for the rest of their lives, this is it, a toe-tapping piece of music inspired them. The fun and happiness that they brought to countless people will endear them always to everyone who knew them. And when they retired, I had written to everybody I can think of, which was an unbelievable number of people all over the US and Canada. And I said, please send me letters. I want to make an album for them. And they have an unbelievable album of letters that I'm gonna have, I find some way to publish all this because I have only touched on just a minor little amount. I've taken a lot of your time, but there's so much more, and you just can't believe it. But I do. I love them, miss them, and I'm so happy. My niece, Dee's daughter, is here with us, and a surprise, stand up Dorothy K-ish to me. She was one of Manning Smith's early students. How old were you?
I was there for all of it.
Yeah, how old were you?
As a child, ballroom in Holiday Bryan, and then I was in the exhibition square with the Aggies and traveled, you know, to some of the dance conventions with them. So everything she said is true.
Yes, and Mother and Dad loved children and young people. Manning Smith started dance classes for actually middle school children and up. Early on, yeah, so middle school. And my parents loved this young lady and her eventual husband. They were just like their own kids, and that's how they treated them.
We met, my husband and I met at the dance classes on campus.
Okay.
MSC, the first one.
Okay, well, those MSC classes filled up very quickly. If those Aggies didn't jump in there and register, they were full. But I didn't mention to you, all the time that they were choreographing dances and they were traveling, sometimes their travel schedule was unbelievable. They would have, like, in 1 month, 4 or 5 different institutes, so they go from one to another to another to another. But they also had hundreds of school kids, and they were from all around this area, but they would have 200 to 500 kids and adults of all ages that they were teaching classes to. My niece has to go to her conference. I was so glad she was here.
I gotta give her a hug. I love you.
Oh, love you back.
All right, I'll see you.
Okay. So kids were always a big deal to my parents, and they loved them and enjoyed them. And I said, my only sadness is that they've never gotten to know our grandchildren. They knew our children, but not the grandchildren. But anyway, I thank you. Does anybody else have any other questions?